Two people can earn the exact same paycheck for 20 years and end up in totally different places. One retires with a paid-off house and $500,000 saved. The other retires with nothing and a pile of bills. The difference usually is not luck. It is a short list of habits that quietly drain money every single month. Today, we are breaking down 10 of the biggest ones. Some of them will surprise you, and by the end, you will know exactly which ones might be costing you the most. Picture two coworkers. They start the same job at the same salary. Over the next 10 years, both of them get raises and promotions. One of them upgrades his car every time he gets a raise. Nicer apartment, nicer phone, more takeout. The other keeps his car, keeps his apartment, and puts every raise straight into savings. This is called lifestyle inflation. That is just a fancy way of saying your spending grows every time your income grows, so you never actually get ahead. The person who upgrades everything is not doing anything wrong on the surface. He is not overspending compared to his income. But he is trading his future for comfort right now, and he does not even realize it. Say both men start at $50,000 a year, and both end up at $90,000 a year after 10 years of raises. If the second guy saves just half of every raise instead of spending it, and invests it at a normal long-term stock market return, he could end up with over $100,000 extra by the end of that 10-year stretch. Same job, same raises, one simple decision. And this leads right into the second habit, because a lot of that lifestyle inflation goes toward one specific thing that drains more money than almost anything else. A new car feels great to drive off the lot. It smells new, it looks new, and it says something about where you are in life. But here's what most people do not think about. A brand new car loses a big chunk of its value the moment you drive it away, sometimes 20% in the first year alone. Now picture someone financing a $40,000 truck on a 6-year loan. By the time it is paid off, between interest and the value it lost, that truck could have cost them close to $60,000 for something that is now worth maybe $15,000. Compare that to someone who buys a reliable used car for $15,000 in cash and drives it for 10 years. The difference between those two choices, invested instead of spent, could be worth close to $200,000 by retirement. This is not saying cars are bad. It is saying the way most people buy cars quietly wrecks their long-term wealth. And speaking of things that quietly wreck wealth, there is one that moves even faster than a car loan, and it is sitting in almost everyone's wallet. Credit cards are not the problem. Carrying a balance on them is. Here is why this one is so dangerous. Most credit cards charge somewhere around 20 to 25% interest a year. That is one of the highest interest rates a normal person will ever pay for anything. Let's say someone has a $5,000 balance on a card with 22% interest, and they only pay the minimum payment every month. It could take them over 15 years to pay it off, and they could end up paying more than $8,000 in interest alone, on top of the original $5,000. The scary part is how normal this feels. Nobody plans to carry a balance forever. It happens 1 month at a time, one emergency at a time, until it becomes permanent. Which brings up a question worth sitting with for a second. If credit card debt is this expensive, why do so many people who earn good money still carry it every single month? Part of the answer is habit number 4, and it might be the one people are least willing to admit to themselves. There is always a new shiny thing promising fast money. A hot stock tip, a crypto coin about to explode, a system somebody is selling online that promises to make thousands overnight. Most of these do not work, and the ones that do work for a little while are usually taking money from everyone else who joined later. Think about two friends who each have $5,000 saved. One of them puts it into a trendy investment because a video online promised it would double in a month. The other one puts it into a simple, boring investment account and just leaves it alone for 30 years. The first friend has roughly a coin flip chance of losing most of it. The second friend, based on how the stock market has performed on average over long periods, could turn that $5,000 into something like $60,000 or more over 30 years without doing anything else. Boring wins. It just does not feel like it in the moment, because boring does not go viral. And that need for something exciting is exactly what leads into the next mistake, one that has nothing to do with spending too much and everything to do with waiting too long. Here is something most people do not fully grasp until it is too late. When you invest, time does more work than money does. Let's say two people each invest $200 a month. One of them starts at age 25. The other one waits and starts at age 35, so only 10 years later. By age 65, assuming a normal long-term market return, the person who started at 25 could end up with somewhere around $500,000. The person who waited 10 years, even though they invested for the same monthly amount and stopped at the same age, might end up with only around half of that. 10 years of waiting can cut your final total nearly in half. That is the cost of putting it off, even if everything else about your habits is exactly the same. Now here is where things get interesting, because even people who do start investing early can still make a mistake that quietly cancels out a big chunk of their progress. This next one flies under the radar more than almost anything else on this list. A savings account feels safe. Your money is not going anywhere, there is no risk of losing it in the stock market, and you can see the numbers sitting there every time you check. But there is a hidden cost most people never think about, and it is called inflation. That is just the general rise in prices over time, meaning the same dollar buys a little less every year. If someone keeps $50,000 sitting in a savings account, earning almost no interest, and prices rise around 3% a year, that $50,000 is quietly losing buying power every single year, even though the number on the screen never goes down. Over 20 years, that same $50,000 could lose close to half of its real value in terms of what it can actually buy. Meanwhile, someone who puts that same $50,000 into long-term investments instead could see it grow to well over $150,000 in that same 20 years, even after accounting for inflation. Same starting amount, two completely different outcomes just based on where the money sits. But before anyone rushes off to move every dollar into investments, there is a catch. There is one thing you actually do need sitting safely in cash, and skipping it is what causes the next mistake on this list. Life throws curveballs. A car breaks down, a job gets cut, a medical bill shows up out of nowhere. Someone who has no savings set aside for emergencies has to deal with these moments by either going into debt or pulling money out of their investments at the worst possible time. Picture two people who both lose their job during a rough economic stretch. One of them has 3 months of expenses saved up in cash. He pays her bills, keeps his investments untouched, and finds a new job without much damage. The other person has nothing saved, so he puts his bills on a credit card at 22% interest and has to pull money out of his retirement account early, which usually comes with extra taxes and penalties. That second person could end up losing $10,000 to $15,000 just from that one emergency, between the debt, the penalties, and the investments he had to sell low. An emergency fund is not exciting. It just sits there doing nothing most of the time. But that is exactly the point. It is supposed to be boring, because the moment you need it, everything else is already chaotic. Now, having your money habits in order on paper is one thing, but there is a completely different force working against people every single day, and it has nothing to do with math. It has to do with what everyone else around them is doing. This is not just about losing thousands of dollars over a lifetime anymore. Every mistake we have covered so far compounds together. Someone who inflates their lifestyle, finances a new car, carries credit card debt, chases fast money, delays investing, leaves cash sitting in savings, and skips an emergency fund is not just making 7 separate mistakes. Those mistakes stack on top of each other, year after year, and the gap between that person and someone who avoided all 7 does not just add up. It multiplies. We are talking about a difference that can reach into the millions of dollars by retirement age, not because of one bad decision, but because of how these decisions feed into each other over decades. And there are still 3 more habits to go, including one that might be the sneakiest of all. Social media makes this one worse than it has ever been. Someone posts a new kitchen renovation. Another person posts a vacation. Another posts a new car. It is easy to look at all of that and feel behind, even when your own finances are perfectly healthy. Here's the problem. Most people online are only showing the purchase, never the debt behind it. A person posting photos from a resort might be paying it off on a credit card for the next 2 years. A person showing off a new kitchen might have just taken out a loan against their house to pay for it. The comparison feels real, but the full picture almost never is. Someone who spends based on what they see online instead of what fits their own budget can end up years behind on their own goals, chasing a lifestyle that was not even real to begin with. Which raises a fair question. If so much of what people see is not the full story, why does it still work so well at getting people to spend? Part of the answer connects directly to the next habit, because the less someone understands about money, the easier it is to convince them to spend it. A lot of people were never taught how loans work, how interest works, or how investing works. That is not their fault. Most schools do not teach it. But avoiding it as an adult, on purpose, is where the real damage happens. Think about two people offered the exact same car loan. One of them understands what an interest rate actually means and negotiates it down, or shops around for a better deal. The other one signs whatever paperwork is put in front of them because the monthly payment sounds fine. Over the life of that loan, the difference between a good interest rate and a bad one on a $30,000 car loan can be several $1,000s, just from not asking a few basic questions. This pattern repeats with credit cards, with mortgages, with retirement accounts. It is not about becoming a financial expert, it is about knowing enough to ask the right questions before signing anything. And that leads into the final habit, the one that ties every single other mistake on this list together. This is not about hiring an expensive advisor. It is about having some kind of structure, a budget, a plan, a system, instead of just reacting to whatever bill or paycheck shows up next. Someone with no plan tends to make decisions in the moment, based on how they feel that day. Someone with even a simple plan tends to make decisions based on where they actually want to end up. Picture two brothers who both earn the same income. One of them has never written down a budget in his life. He pays bills as they come, spends whatever is left, and hopes it works out. The other brother spends 20 minutes a month checking his numbers, has a rough plan for saving and investing, and adjusts it when something changes. Over 20 years, the brother with even a basic plan tends to end up with dramatically more saved. Not because he earned more, but because every dollar had a job instead of just disappearing. So here is where all 10 of these come together. None of them are really about being irresponsible. They are about drifting, spending a little more each year without noticing, financing things that lose value, carrying debt that quietly grows, chasing excitement instead of steady growth, waiting to start, letting cash sit still while prices rise around it, skipping the safety net, comparing yourself to a version of other people's lives that is not even real, avoiding the basics of how money works, and never building a simple plan to tie it all together. Go back to those two coworkers from the very beginning of this video. Same job, same paycheck, same city. The only real difference between the one who retires comfortable and the one who does not is how many of these 10 habits they avoided. Not luck, not some secret trick, just 10 decisions made over and over for years. And now you know exactly what all 10 of them are.